This is Kylie from Femme and Flow. I have a TikTok account that I've been sharing spiritual content on, and I really felt led to share my point of view, share my perspective, and see if anyone resonates or it helps them. So I thought that a podcast might be a good way to go about this to share longer form content. I found that a lot of my videos on TikTok, I would call them mini podcasts episodes, but they were longer. And I know TikTok isn't really the place to share 10-minute videos, even though it allows it. I didn't know how many people would actually stop and listen to it 10 minutes when they're in the middle of scrolling. So I thought trying out a podcast might be perfect. Let's see how it goes. I'm excited to share more. I thought the perfect first episode would just be giving a little background on myself so you get to know me a little bit more and sharing my own story. I'm 30 years old and I had what you would consider your first spiritual awakening in 2021. And now, hearing others go through that, it sounds like a lot of people had a spiritual awakening around that time. That's really interesting to me. But as many spiritual awakenings come, it came during a really hard time in my life when I just felt like everything was crumbling and I didn't know where to go. I wasn't in a good spot necessarily. And hey, I think that's how a lot of spiritual awakenings happen. I'll get more into this about surrender and allowing in your life. I think if you're not in that spot of surrendering or just allowing a higher power to guide you, that is when these harder spiritual awakenings happen that really push you into another lane because you're very off course. So higher power comes in, it's like, you are off course and you're not listening to me. Let's just push you into this other lane so you're aligned with who you're supposed to be and what you came to do here. And looking back, that's absolutely what happened. And I'm so thankful for it now. Going through it at the time, it's like, what is happening? My life's falling apart. I don't know where to go. And I was 2021, let's see, how old was I? I was 27. Another thing I've learned since then is I don't know if you're into astrology, but there's a thing called your Saturn return, and it happens around 27, between 27 and 30, and that aligns for me. So if you're into that, hey, that happened to me. So while we're talking about Saturn returns, just a little bit of knowledge I've learned. I've heard if you are very set in your ways, you think you are on the right path, you're driven, you're goal oriented, you're going to make it happen, and you're more locked down in your way of thinking. I've heard that's when your Saturn return is a lot harder because it's like the universe is trying to shake you away from what you're like gripped so tightly to. It's like, no, this isn't your path. Let's shake you off this tree that you're so stuck on. But I've heard if you more go with the flow and you're open to the universe, you're allowing a higher power to guide you, like I mentioned before, then your Saturn return is easier. I've heard that you don't want to be super locked down in every aspect of your life. I won't get into all of that though. But hey, that's where I was, Saturn return, 27, spiritual awakening, and I was on the grip tight path. So, hey, I had to be shaken off that a little bit. I thought I knew better. I didn't understand this whole surrender, allow, let the universe be in charge, that our soul chose a path before we got here. I thought I was letting my ego completely control my path. And I thought that was a high powered career, going after it, ambition, achieving, achieving. That was the path I was on. Like, oh, if you push the door hard enough, if you knock it down, you'll get it. That's kind of the path I was on. And I think when you're on that path, that's when you can have a hard spiritual awakening or that hard Saturn return period because of what I mentioned before. Up until this period, still during this period, but undergoing internal turmoil. I was working in finance asset management type of job. And just looking back, all growing up during college, education, you're always being taught to have all these goals that are, well, I hate that term, smart goals, specific, measurable, all that, whatever. I just feel like very burned by it now. Not to hate on anyone if they do goals like that, but now it's just like, oh, I don't want to set those kind of goals. It was so like burned into me through education that you set these smart goals, you're always looking after your goals, you're always going after it. You're always you're like never satisfied. You're always going after something new. And oh man, looking back it's just so tiring because you're never satisfied, you're never content, you're always going after the next step. And I feel like that's how it is in education and when you get into the workforce. You're always vying for that next position, trying to climb the corporate ladder, and that's definitely the path I was on. And I was always vying for something else, never happy with where I was at. And now I just think the corporate world is a scam. I'm gonna whisper that because I'm still in a corporate job right now. I won't get into that. Um, yeah, we won't get into that right now. But that's totally how I felt. And then when you get into the workforce, please tell me if this resonates with you. When you get into the workforce and you realize reality hits you that all of these years of education and all of these years of going goal after goal, always trying to achieve something new, always going after something, then it hits you. I did all of that for this. Oh my gosh, this is depressing. Holiday breaks are over. Now I literally have to work this job every day for the rest of my life until I retire. And I have to submit time off, submit sick into a portal. What? And I have this allocated days off? It's so depressing. Please raise your hand. Please let me know if this is also depressing to you. This had me having a major quarter life crisis, which really that was a hot Google search for me for a while. Googling quarter life crisis. Anyone else relate? Mayday, what is going on? This is my life. It was really sad. And then that got me thinking. Then I was in a period like, "Okay, I do not wanna do this. I do not wanna work in this atmosphere. This does not feel like my purpose in life." And then I kept tying purpose to a job, which is very off base, like, "No, no, no, that is not a soul's purpose. Our soul's purpose is nothing to do with our career." Like, that is just no, no, no. But I didn't realize that yet. I was not spiritual at this point. Like, I was raised in church, but my mom was also very open-minded. She didn't indoctrinate me into anything. She was very open-minded, and I really appreciate that. My grandparents were more religious, but I got to see some different perspectives. I wasn't really spiritual. I had that background, kind of a religious upbringing, not super strict or anything. So I was not spiritual at this point, and I didn't know any of that soul's purpose stuff that I believe now. And I just thought, okay, everyone talks about your purpose and having that matters to have a fulfilling life. So I was tying that to a career. And side note, I think um media is really good at making you think that. It puts out these images of sexy, high-powered careers, city view apartment, consumerism, buying all this stuff, but really paints that as the picture for fulfillment and success. And hey, I do like having nice stuff, but I just have a completely different perspective on it now and feel way more balanced in my life. And it's not about consumerism and showing what you have. I think you can like that stuff, but it's more about appreciating the beauty of it and how humans are so creative. And that's the beautiful part about it. But anyways, won't go on that tangent. So, during this time of my life, I was like, "Okay, this career is not fulfilling me." Actually, the thought of working a 9 to 5 or this in this case, 8 to 5 is very depressing to me. Let's see, I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. Maybe that's my purpose. So, I was exploring these different ideas to start a company and just trying different things out, and they were more creative endeavors, not something that probably would make a big amount of money. They were definitely more like passion project type of things. And come on, I think everyone should be able to have a passion project and really do something that is fulfilling to their heart and they like find a creative outlet for. It's just stinks that in this society you have to work to put a roof over your head and eat. Like our basic needs, you have to cover that. And man, I just think our society is the same. There is better coming. There is better coming. So I definitely don't think you should ever dwell on all the things that's wrong in society. When I say that, I'm not dwelling on it. I'm not tying emotion to that. I'm just observing. And I think that's the way you should go about it. Don't like dwell on the negatives. Like just think of the positives. So I'm definitely not trying to do that by bringing that up. But so I went through all of that path and just was unhappy in my career, just unhappy in my life. I was living in a place like in a city away from my boyfriend, away from family. I would literally just go to work at 8 a.m., work all day in an office building, get off work, work out, have dinner by that time to go to bed. Like that was my day to day. And that's not a fulfilling life, and I don't think anyone should be living that way, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people are. And I didn't have any hobbies, really. If someone asked me what my hobby was, I would go blank. And not to say that's everyone in a corporate career because there were a few of my coworkers that really had interesting hobbies that were really unique to them, and I could tell it was like a fulfilling thing. So, I could have gone about that, finding a hobby, but I didn't. But really, it is a lot of work if you're a single person and you do wanna work out, make dinner. There's a lot of stuff to do, after work, but I don't know. I'm not making excuses. That was just my perspective at the time. So, anyways, really tying your work to your purpose is not going to lead to fulfillment in any way, and that's the path I was going down, and it was just really, really sad. So then fast forward, I won't get into details of why this was a really hard time in my life. It was personal issues, but 2021 stuff just hit the fan, and then I was like, "Okay, maybe I'm going to move, maybe I'm going to get a different job." Like, my whole life felt like it was up in the air, and I didn't know where to go, and I was really, really upset, as people are when they feel like the world turns upside down. And I started reading the Bible, which the Bible, doesn't like, it never really resonated with me, um, but y part of what did resonate and still does is, Jesus's when Jesus speaks. Um, he speaks in these very beautiful parables, and they were really touching to me. I remember crying and just trying to work from home, also just reading the Bible more during this time, searching for apartments, trying to figure out where I should move, applying to jobs, and I literally heard a whisper, "It's going to be okay." And it literally I was crying and it stopped me in my tracks, and I just looked up like, "Where did that just come from? Was that in my head? Did I actually hear that?" And it, like, was very meaningful to me, and literally, it's like a flip switched after that. I just knew it's all gonna be okay, and there's if this isn't my path, there's a bigger path for me or a better path. There's, like, a path to fulfillment, and I in that moment, I just completely surrendered and allowed a higher power just to make it all work out for me, and I just said, "Okay, I surrender. I know whatever is after this is going to be so much better for me," and I just had faith and believed that my life was going to shift, and from then on, like, I wasn't crying and stuff like I was before. I felt happy again, and I was like, "Okay, I don't know where I'm going, but this is gonna be awesome, like, I'm here for it." And then within the next few days after that of just, like, allowing and letting a higher power guide me, like, some things played out, but then everything just wrapped up, in a bow again. The major points that were of conflict at the time, if that makes sense. I still had the job and all of that, but some major conflicts were then resolved in a perfect way that felt like my heart felt very settled on. And I just think God will never allow our heart to feel that content and settled on something that's not right for us. You really do have to look inward and trust yourself and your feelings. That was really cool. But that's just the beginning. If anyone else has been through this, they know that's just the beginning. That spiritual awakening is just the beginning to more spiritual awakenings and more things along this beautiful path. So then let's fast forward. I kept working at that job, but it was still, I knew it wasn't my path, but now some other aspects of my personal life were in a much better place. And when you have security in other aspects, that's when you feel like you can make the moves and all of that. So I felt very supported in other areas of my life, but I still didn't feel like I was on the right path for my career. So that led me to another phase in my spiritual awakening. Oh, wait, but pause. Before this, I had met a friend who we could talk about anything together, spiritual stuff, all of that, and it was really important. She was a really important part of my life and still is. I had that friend, like, helping me through all of this too, and I could talk to. And then I started reading Dr. Brian Weiss books, Many Lives, Many Masters. That was the first one. And then I just got so interested in similar books talking about past life regression and stuff like that. Once you just get interested into a topic that has to do with spirituality, then if you really just are loving that and go down that path, it's just really enlightening to learn different points of view, and it just gets you really interested in all of it. So that was one thing that I was really interested in at that time. But then, okay, now let's go back to the second phase of spiritual awakening that I was talking about. So I didn't have a set path to quit my job and I didn't have anything lined up, but I had been talking to my boyfriend about it. He was really supportive of wanting me to figure out what would make me happy career wise. and all of that, I had this idea for this product that I was working on, and it seemed like things were aligning there. So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna work on this and eventually quit my job." But I had no plans to quit yet. Then one week, uh, I just felt super called, super pushed. You may know, like, that feeling where it's just like, and if you're not listening, I think this can manifest in, like, super unhappiness because higher power is trying to push you out in some way, because if you're happy all the time and you're not listening to those nudges, then you're not gonna make a change. So I think that's when you can feel really unhappy and stuff. So I felt very unhappy in the career, very unsettled there, and things weren't going well. So one week I felt just called like, okay, very unhappy. Things are brewing in the air. So I don't know how to explain it. Things are brewing. And then I started seeing angel numbers 444 literally every day for that whole week, like multiple times. I have screenshots from that period, like every day for I think it was a week. It might have been longer. Now, some things are a little fuzzy. I could go back and look, but even down to the point one day I was like crying about my job and I was wearing an Apple Watch. And when you like look at the Apple Watch, then even it goes to the seconds. It says hours, minutes, and then when you look it like expands out to seconds, all of it said 444444. It's like, oh my gosh. And I had already been seeing that message a lot that week. So it just felt wow. And then literally at work, something just came up where it's like, this is my moment. Cause it was like, okay, well, I won't get into a lot of specifics, but we worked from home during the pandemic, but then once that started wrapping up, they really wanted everyone to come back into the office. But I had moved to another city I had moved in with my boyfriend and I wasn't going to move back. So we had to reshuffle what my work was doing, and what I was doing at the time, I was not liking it at all. So they were going to give me another opportunity to work with this other group. I just had background that aligned that I could help them, but they wanted me to come back for a week, a month, and I had rented out my condo, and I was not making enough to, like, justify having a condo rent in that city. It just didn't make any sense. But they said, "Oh, we'd pay for your hotel." But man, I just had to think, do I want that lifestyle where I'm going back up there for a week, a month, and staying out of a hotel? And ultimately, no, I didn't. That all just came at the perfect time during that week where I made the decision. I actually quit and I used the product that I was working on as an excuse, and I did really want that to pan out. And let me tell you, this was not an easy decision. I told you my background about how my view on education and work and how, like, I was very ambitious and very driven. This was not an easy decision for me, like, at all, or an easy like, it just was very hard. I was pretty scared. I was upset, all of those things. So then after that, I started working on this other product and things literally fell apart with that. I won't get into details, but there were some personal relationships involved that were not straightforward. Stuff wasn't straightforward at all, and I felt blindsided. But hey, things work out for the best always. I believe that it wasn't in my path to do that. So it had to fall apart, which now I see it in that perspective, but at the time, it's still hard. That falls apart, I'm still thinking, "Okay, what should I do?" And I really looking back, I wish I took the time to, like well, I'm happy how I took the time. It completely changed me as a person, but I wish I wasn't stressed out the whole time, basically. Just worrying, but my boyfriend was worried about it. He was pushing me to figure it out, and having that stress on you is hard too, but hey, I completely understand. Long story short, I ended up taking a year off work while I was trying to figure out my next step. And like I said, this wasn't a non-stressful year. There's a lot of stress in trying to figure it out and trying to figure out if it's going to be my own company, my own project. But hey, that's a thing you can't just force out of nowhere. You have to have ideas. Alert, alert, you must have an idea. Oh man, I laugh now. I'm happy I can laugh about it. So during that time, I did start applying to other jobs. But during this time, I really, even though I was stressed, I really feel like I healed my nervous system during this time. I was in very much fight or flight before that. And if you watch my TikToks, I talk about this so much about how we have to heal our nervous system in order to get in the place where we can create create our own reality, which is what we're here to do. And I'll do another episode on this. But long story short, definitely healed my nervous system during this time. I feel like I just completely shifted as a person. I feel like I was definitely more like in my divine masculine before then. Probably makes sense how I talked about ambition, always going after things, trying to force rather than just flow. And during this time, I really got in touch with my feminine side again, which is so amazing. And I feel really balanced now in the masculine and feminine. But during that time too, I just started meditating a lot more often. I started doing this practice that I shared on my TikTok, but I'll share it again if you guys are interested, where I would write down the intention I want and the emotion that is attached to that intention. And as you can imagine, being unemployed, one of them was a job. And that I wanted to make the same money I was making before, but remote, very flexible, unlimited time off that I enjoyed. And then I would tie the emotions to it. And there were other things, but that was always on the first of my list just because of where I was at the time. So that was something I would do. I also tried tapping. I was just cooking more, doing Pilates, stuff like that, just really getting in touch with that feminine side. And it was really interesting because at the end of this, more towards the end, one of the employers I was talking to wanted me to take a personality test. Well, she didn't want me to take it. She just thought that we have the same personality on one of these tests. I forgot which one it was, but I had taken this one before and I took it again and I got a different result. And it was like, I just love it. Showed exactly the changes too. I felt really proud that I had changed so much over that year. And one of them, I used to be in my thinking the thinking side of the spectrum, and now is in the feeling side. And I think that's one of the huge things that comes with spirituality. You really get into your heart and get in touch with God, a higher source. You do that through going internal by connecting through your heart. And then you really trust that feeling, intuitive side of you, which, if you're not tapped into spirituality, you might more follow the logical, um, going off data driven side rather than trusting yourself. So that was one of the things that I saw I saw this proof in this test and I knew it was already going on, but that was just eye opening for me. And I thought it was really, really cool. That same person who had me ask me that test, she gave me a job offer and the local market is very different from the city I lived in, really different when it comes to salaries. So it was a lot lower than I was expecting, a lot lower than when I set those intentions in my manifestation and meditation practice, a lot different than that, and not flexible. I would have to go into the office, definitely not unlimited time off like I was wanting. And my boyfriend was like, "You need to just accept something and then you can figure it out from there." And I just knew in my heart, I'm like, "No, I should not accept this." I just knew something better was coming. So I said I didn't accept that one. And ultimately, I did end up getting a job that had unlimited time off. And truly, like it is when you hear that, usually it has to get approved by your supervisor. Like this is such a flexible place. I get paid pretty much the same as I was getting paid before. And it's just so flexible. And I really do love my boss. She is amazing. That is something that truly came from, I know that was the manifestation and the meditations and getting all aligned. I know that for a fact because there were not a lot of jobs that I was applying to that had exactly what I was going after. And then this worked out a year, literally, I think almost to the dot a year after I quit my job. I just feel like the universe, God was like, no, you need this year to just heal your nervous system, get back in touch with your feminine side. You need just to rebalance. I really, truly believe that looking back. And I'm just so thankful for it all and thankful that I could do that. I know a lot of people maybe couldn't quit their job for a year and be supported by someone. So I'm so thankful for that. But yeah, that's my story with it. And let's see. There's another just since then, I've had different periods of just complete awe and wonder, like many spiritual awakenings, just a lot more moments like that. And I think when you just open up to that world, believe it, allow it in, there's going to be so many synchronicities, so many moments of awe and wonder that just instill this is so true. This is the path. But yeah, so then along this path, I felt very called, very led to start sharing more. And another thing I've learned about myself, I really am into human design. I don't know a ton about it. I've never gotten a full reading, but I know the gist of what I am. I'm a manifesting generator. And then my profile is 1-3, which is like investigator. And I've heard other people who I follow that have podcasts and are very into spirituality. It's so weird. They're the same. They're 1-3 also. So there's nothing I care more about than the spiritual path and really understanding it all, understanding myself, investigating, exploring, just testing it out in real life. So, since I'm so obsessed with that and it's definitely my number one hobby, it's the main thing I care about. So, I really just feel like people who have that obsession and have that interest, they should share it with other people because I know not everyone is, they might have a different profile and they came here for a different reason. They have a different soul's purpose and they're doing that. So, I just think it's so cool if everyone got tapped into their own soul's purpose and started following that. And what's cool about the spiritual path and the spiritual awakening is you don't just have a spiritual awakening and then know everything. It's like a beautiful winding path of uncovering things about the universe, about Earth, about yourself. And it's like this beautiful dance on this winding path. And it's really cool. So I really just want to share my own experiences with everyone and see what resonates with other people and hear other people's stories. Like I really just want Femme and Flow to ultimately one day be a community where people share their information, share their thoughts, and support each other. I'm also excited because, like I mentioned there's so much more to the whole spiritual path than those bullet points I mentioned. So I think it'll be so cool to have this place where when these really cool, inspiring stories come up that I can share and see if other people had similar experiences or what cool things have happened to them. So that's something I'm very excited about. So that gives you a little background on my story, my own spiritual awakening, just touched on some of the big moments in that spiritual path. I definitely want to share more. There's so much more to it. I'm sitting here like, okay, how else do I incorporate some of this? But I think that's a good starting place, and now there's a platform to share more interesting stories and just different topics. So I hope that helps. And I'm guessing a lot of people probably relate to that. I'd love to hear your story and um, hear what you think. But I'm really excited to start sharing more. And thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I feel very led to do this. I don't have that many followers at all on TikTok. My posts don't reach, a ton of people compared to other other accounts that pop up on to my TikTok for you page. So really I'm hoping that some people relate and it helps people. I feel like when you feel called to do something, you should do it despite, I guess, logic that might surround it at the time. I just think if I help one person, I'm happy. So let me know. But I'm just so excited that I just recorded my first podcast and now I need to figure out how to upload it and share it. So, well, you can't wish me luck on that because you will hear this after, but I'm just trusting that you would wish me luck, so I'll take that energy and run with it. But thank you so much. Have a great day.